I'm Maynard with First and Foremost, and I'm going to show you step by step how to build this shed. Today we're going to start with the floor, so let's get started and make it happen, Captain. To get started, we've kind of got a little jump start here, and I'll explain a little bit of what went on in that process. So we have an overall dimension of what our shed is going to be. It's 12 foot wide by 12 foot deep rather, and 16 foot wide. You install 3 stakes in the ground on every corner. Now these stakes need to be a little bit wider than what the actual building is going to be, and I'll show you why a little bit later. But for now, again, our measurement was 12 foot deep and 16 foot wide. So we installed these 3 stakes with these 3 foot cross sections, and the height of these cross sections is not important at the beginning. The most important part about it is, if you tack it off in one portion, make sure it's perfectly level as you get to the other side, tack it off and continue that level for the side arm as well. And that needs to be the same for all 4 corners. So what I was able to do is mark a mark on this board and that board about 3 foot off my fence line, and install 1 string line, so we kind of had a base place to pull our measurements from. All right, being that we knew exactly where we wanted to come from in the back, I was able to pull a 12 foot line accurately and mark that in the front. So our front to back measurement is pretty solid at this moment. But you might want to use this L square, or framing square as it's most commonly referred, to get yourself a little closer as far as the front, so that when you do go to square up, you're not 3 or 4 inches out of square, and you end up having to slide past actually where your 2x4 or leveled board is located. So we marked our 16 foot, and to get the mark on the front corner up there, we just put the framing square perpendicular to our solid line, which is the very first line we pulled, and got the string in the front very, very close to where we thought it would be. So right now it's not really important to be perfectly square. We just want to get it really close, and we'll be able to make that adjustment here in a few seconds. But 3 things that we're sure of at this moment. Our back line is where we want the building to be. Our front line is where we want it to be versus in relation to where our back line is. And we have our 16 foot end to end marked on the 2x4. So those we know are solid. So once we have your mark, after you use the framing square here in the front corner, just pull your 16 foot dimension over to the other side and put a temporary mark. So at least at this particular moment, our parallels are at the exact spacing we desire, 12 foot and 16 foot. The next step that we need to take is square these lines off and see if there's any adjustment that is going to make our building perfectly square. Now, once we have our parallels perfectly the same width, you really want to check and make sure that your overall dimension is square, because if you don't start off with a square foundation, it's going to be really tough to build a clean and proper building above. So we're going to measure from corner to corner simultaneously so we can see exactly where we're at and how far we are out of square. Now, this was just done with an eyeball and a little bit of a framing square, so this is more precise and actually, necessary. ¿Qué lo tienes ahí, Piro? 11.38. ¿Y usted tiene 20 pies clavado? Okay, so solo es 5 octavos. All right, so what we're talking about there, guys, is he has 20 foot from this corner to that corner. Fido has 19 foot 11 and 3/8. So we're technically only 5/8 out of square. That's pretty daggone close for working with a framing square. So to make that adjustment, you always want to leave the 2 corners without moving them. You can't just move one corner or the one back corner and one front corner. You have to move both front corners or both back corners So whatever portion you're starting with, or in my case, this is my most sure point because I have, measured off of where I really want my garage to be at. So we're gonna let this side stay stationary and we're gonna move the front. Being that this side was longer than this side, we're gonna shift this about 3/8 of an inch, which is half of what we were out of square, and that should bring us right to point A. So if you are in your squaring up process and one side is bigger than the other, you need to shift the wall to the lower measured side and usually split that difference in half, and you should come out about right. So we got our exact measurement. Now at this point, it's time to mark our footing or support system. In this case, we're gonna have 12 by 12 by 10 inch pier blocks supporting 6 by 6 pressure treated posts. So we're gonna mark those off and we'll be ready to dig. Now in this garage, we're gonna have 3 supports on this side, 3 supports on the far side, and in the middle, we're gonna put a girder beam with 2 supports under it. This particular garage, my wife wants those ATVs parked inside. So we're gonna have a little bit of extra weight, and we need to have a little bit of strength here in the middle as well. And we're gonna try to make this a really easy install, but you just can't force or fudge anything to do with the foundation. The most important key aspect to building is the product finishes with how you start it. So if you start with a good, solid, square, and level base, more than likely it's gonna be easier to construct, and the finished product is just gonna turn out that much better. Oh yeah. Now guys, the start is always the hardest part. As I mentioned before, it's one of the most important, so don't get discouraged if it takes a little while. One thing to remember, guys, whether you're cutting notches in stairs or posts, it's nice to finish those off with a reciprocating saw that has a straight blade. Not that with the circular saws or circular blades, they tend to have to cut past the finish mark of the cut so deep that it does sometimes jeopardize the integrity of the wood itself. So just get close to that corner cut and finish it off with a straight edge reciprocating saw, whether it's Sawzall or a jigsaw of something of that nature. All right, so we're gonna start to install our first band board while they finish up this last bit of these holes. And we're gonna kind of just stand this up at a point where I feel comfortable where our ramp level is gonna be. We'll start from that corner and level ourselves all the way around before we start to square it up and actually stringline the band boards themselves. So now we have the majority of, actually we have all of our blocks installed. Depending on the area or zone that you're in, we get a little cold here in the winter, so you want your concrete or your pier blocks to be below your freeze point. Typically up here, we go a minimum of 18 inches all the way down to 24 inches deep. I know I've built down in South Carolina before, and they only have to go about 12 inches deep. So kind of keep that in mind. Make sure you have those at a sufficient depth that does not become an issue. We're gonna cut 8 joists at 7'7" and 5/8", and that'll be our first section. Now I have a little something I want to go do later, guys, so we're gonna speed this up just a little teeny bit. My son's playing baseball tonight, and he might get the pitch, so I want to catch that if it happens. But we're still gonna make sure we hit every point. We're gonna adjust this a little bit, get it more to the inside there. Make sure we're sitting directly under the center of the post as much as possible. Llenarme un poquito ahí con un poco de polvo, por favor. Ahí por este lado, Simón. All right, that gets us a little bit more level there, so we get more solid contact with the post itself. Now, we're gonna start this building on the highest corner of the elevation. As you can see, the land slopes that way. So to make sure that we're not gonna have to either excavate a whole ton and also not to have too high of a ramp when we go to install the door, we're gonna start from this highest corner and then we'll move on from there. All right, let's go ahead and tack this up. Tenerme ahí, Fido? Now, one thing you guys wanna make sure that you do is, being that we're using pressure treated wood, you have to nail these floors off and the plywood above with hot dip galvanized nails. These are chemically induced pressure treated lumber. These will eat normal common nails up after a long period of time. So make sure you're using hot dip galvanized. They come for hand driven nails or pneumatic guns as well. Carlos, if you'll get that measurement right there, I'm gonna hold it level. We have it attached to our first block. Ayúdame a levantar este lado un poco. Yo sostengo el nivel. Levantarlo. I'm gonna lift this side up with Carlos's help. Un poco más. Un poco más. Un poco más todavía. Un poquito más. Ahí mero, Fido. 26.5. And while I hold that level, Fido's gonna get his other post measurement, and we'll set that down to take a rest while we get inside. 26.5. Una recto, sin noche. All right, Carlos, tack me off right here, buddy. How do you look there, Fido? All right, I like that. Okay. So we're at a good level point now with the first side of the band. We're going to tack this off, and we need to brace this very solidly. Yeah. Más o menos. Now, what we really need to do is make sure we don't disturb these lines. They are not level, but they are square, so you can get your post kind of in this corner here. Not to disturb the line, but to be very, very close to it. And that will do. Okay. And just tack it right there. Yes. Okay, now let's put that support to the fence. Now you really want to make sure you brace the first corner off very, very solidly as to not move and change the measurements of the building itself. We're just going to borrow a little forced fence over here, tack it to the front of the band. All right, and there we go. Now that section cannot move. Now we want to nail these bands off approximately every 16 inches with 3 nails, inside and out. That'll keep them from separating. You know, I've said it before, but there's a lot of humidity in Virginia, and this wood will expand and contract drastically. What Leonel's working on over here is leveling up these posts before we actually backfill them and shove them full. Oh yeah, baby. Good job, Leonel. De este lado. A little bit inside there without adjusting our string. That point wants to go out at the bottom. All right, let's nail this band off on the inside here. This wet pressure treated lumber is really, really heavy. You really need to tell this wood where it needs to go. This inside band is not flush with this outside one. So we're gonna have to raise this up a little bit, and they're gonna use those nails to tell it what to do. No. Make sure we check this crown. So we're gonna install the interior girder beam now. That's really gonna help us up when we string line these edges, because once we do one side, the other side should be straight, even though we'll have to check it. Now we're going to string line this edge over here, to make sure it stays perfect. There it is right there, baby. Nail it, nail it. To make sure we're perfectly straight is a big part of making sure the foundation's properly square, and a nice start makes a nice finish. Always remember that. Now when you're string lining these edges, try not to hold it directly on top of the wood. Hold it a little bit up in case there is any curves. You get a true reading off your chalk line. Hook me right on that corner right there, and let's check the side for the last side. Oh, that is gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous. That's pretty good. We'll check it one more time after the joists are nailed. So we're gonna start our layouts always from one side. It doesn't matter which side you start your layout from. Just remember to offset that first joist 3/4 of an inch. We usually work with 4 foot, 8 foot, and 12 foot sheets of either interior sheetrock, exterior plywood, or boards. They come in nominal lengths of 2 foot. So that means that if you do not offset that first number, when you go and try to nail your plywood on it, it'll actually be on the edge of the 2x4 instead of the center. So when you mark that first joist, instead of marking your red 16, just slide over 3/4 of an inch, mark 15 1/4. You can either set a nail or hold the tape measure there yourself, and then mark 16 inches from that point. Now Carlos has been working with his tape for a while, so he automatically knows to come 3/4 from his red mark. That's already comes with the tape when you buy it. Oh baby, now we are getting to where we have some strength. Arriba. There you go. Now these 4 posts that you see with the notches cut in them was done intentionally so that we can install bolts through these posts into the band and give it a little bit of uplift protection from high winds or very strong storms. The corners that we cut flush, we will install a metal bracket that actually ties to the band itself for the same purpose, to keep that uplift protection. So we nail the top first so it doesn't move all over the place on us. When we try to level it up, we have these 2 interior posts inset approximately 2 feet, and that is going to allow me to build the ramp properly later on, and really a little bit more than we actually needed. But I wanted to turn these joists this way to save on the plywood and make it stronger for those ATVs. So we're going to install 2 1/2-inch through bolts through each one of these posts. Okay, so now we've pre-cut our joist. Over there, while we were taking care of some other things, we had Julian help us out. We cut them at 7 foot 7 1/4. And Fido and Carlos are going to install this ahead of us. And my beautiful little cousin right here, old Chipper Jones, is going to help us put these hangers on so we can move along a little quicker. William's going to be doing the same thing on the other side. And these are probably, and we have an example right here, LUS 26Z hangers. Now a cool little note about hangers, whatever hanger you buy, for example, this one says 2/6, so that means it's for a 2x6. But if they have this Z on the end of them, it can do 2x6 joists and 2x8 joists. So if it has the Z on the very end, it does the joist it says and one size above. That comes to, that's good to know in case you, don't like putting a whole lot of nails into bigger hangers that aren't necessary, or if this is what you got and you're trying to pass code with what you got and actually suffice through the build as well. These 2x6 Z hangers can support 2x6s and 2x8s. All right, we're getting close to the hangers being installed on both sides. That looks really good. And like I said, again, the reason I put this is because obviously I didn't want the joist to span either 16 foot or 12 foot all the way. That just makes for a real bouncy floor. So I thought better to turn these straight and only have an 8 foot span on the joist. How does that feel up there, Chip?
It feels dark, boy. It feels real stark.
I just thought that would be a little bit better, you know, having the four-wheelers up in there and all. So we're gonna pop a 48.5-inch line from the edge of the band this way. And the reason we're gonna do that, because 3/4 plywood does not actually come 4 foot by 8 foot. So if we started this out at just 48 inches like we typically would with 1/2-inch plywood, by the time we get to the other side, we'd have to install a rip. And I just don't like a lot of small pieces on my new projects. So we're gonna start this over at 48.5, and the 1/2 inch that we're gonna be short here on the outside will actually be covered by the sheathing of the wall and not actually giving support to the structure. So it will not make any difference as to the support, being that it's just having sheathing over top. So this is Advantech subfloor glue, which is a real strong subfloor glue that sticks really well. But as you can see, it gets a little crazy if you don't have the gun. You want to really lather that thing up. Okay. Now you don't want to slide that plywood around too much, similar to what we do with the caulking in the windows, because it will smear and not give it the actual stick that we're looking for. All right, you'll see up top here on the plywood, you'll have some guidelines that are marked at different intervals. They're not exact lines, but they're guidelines, so if it's close to a joist, you can follow that up to nail the entire joist. Make sure you feel that plywood contact the joist. If that nail misses, like I said, with that humidity and strong weather, it's just gonna buckle up and cause problems later. Also a good idea on your plywood is to mark the 16-inch centers the same as you did on the wall, so that you can move those joists and tell them where to line up. They will not do it by themselves. And again, guys, same as the exterior wall, you want to nail 3 inches around the perimeter and 5 to 8 inches in the field, which are your 16-inch layout marks. That just, you know, guarantees that you're going to have a good contact and solid nailing pattern on your 3/4 plywood. All right, guys, so now you can see here at the end, we finished up with about the same 1/2-inch reveal as we started with, hence the reason for starting at 48.5 instead of at 48, which will be covered up by the sheathing and not actually giving strength to the walls themselves. The walls will be fully barren. And we feel really solid up here, guys. This is gonna be great for the ATVs. We're gonna finish those honeydew lists. That install went very well. So always remember, the quality of your foundation and floor determines the outcome of the rest of the building. In our next episode, we will be building the walls and the roof. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of it. And until next time, you guys have a great day.